Hey, folks, welcome to Soaring Profits Thursday night. My co host, James, and our guest this evening, Tanya MacIntyre from Red Roof Recovery. Tanya's got a very interesting story. She has been a mainstream media individual for a number of years. After leaving that with some of the political differences, we'll call that, Tanya. How's that for a first little line?
Very diplomatic.
Perfect. Some political differences in her mainstream media career, decided to get into telling people the other side of the story, the real story, the little bit more of a heartfelt story. And now, folks, she has decided to open the Red Roof Recovery in Godric, Ontario. Is that where I'm?
Perfect.
Godrich. Godric. Sorry, that's hard CH. Godrich, Ontario. And she's doing some really cool stuff down there. Tanya, obviously, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We've got the profiteers might be throwing in some questions at some times. That's what we call our audience. And what are you folks doing these days? What's new with you, and what's keeping you busy?
Well, I think everybody can relate to the pandemic pivot, which is what we did in 2020. We decided to do what I know very well, which is addiction recovery, because I've been in my own addiction recovery since 2009. And it hasn't been a linear journey by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, my broadcasting career contributed to my progressive addictions for 20 years. And then, I went into rehab in 2009, and the only model of recovery back then, and I was in Spain at the time, so it was Alcoholics Anonymous. So I always say AA saved my life. I don't think I'd be here if I hadn't gone into rehab then in 2009. But then I relapsed every year for 8 years in 12-step programs of AA and NA. And I was going to a lot of funerals. A lot of my friends weren't coming back from their relapses. And I knew it was just going to be a matter of time before I didn't return from one of mine. So I went looking for something more secular, science-based. Right. And I found a program called SMART, Self-Management and Recovery Training. They were founded in Mentor, Ohio, which kind of resonated with me as well.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I started to practice SMART. I became a facilitator, and I facilitated meetings for 4 years. And I managed to consecutively sustain my recovery. So it works for me. It's cognitive behavioral therapy, and cognitive sounds.
That's a mouthful.
It is. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. Cognition is thought. So it's thinking therapy. And it worked for me because it encourages me to direct rational analysis inward instead of directing retribution outward, which is what I was doing for most of my life.
Right. So obviously, you're bringing up cognitive behavioral therapy, and a lot of individuals that we've had on in the past here on Soaring Profits talk about certain past traumas, different things that come from their childhood, different situations that are triggers, perhaps, whether it be in their addictions or different aspects of their life. Now, what is your view on something like that with cognitive behavioral therapy and looking at that, the triggers, the traumas? What does that take into account?
Well, that's a great question, Patrick. And I think it's one that is going to be different for everybody. I think one of my favorite doctors, Dr. Gabor Mate, he's famous now for his best-selling books on addiction. And he was a doctor in Vancouver, on Vancouver's east side, which was considered, probably still is considered, to be the most chronically addicted population in North America. So he worked there for 12 years and saw thousands of patients. And he said the common thread among all people who are challenged with addictions, and it doesn't matter what they're addicted to, he said there is a common thread. It is all linked to childhood trauma.
Interesting.
So I thought of that because, I think understanding what my addictions were was a very important element in my recovery. And definitely, there was childhood trauma, but who hasn't had a level of childhood trauma? We all have. Yeah. So, I don't know if that's a little too simplistic, For us in Red Roof Recovery, my husband joined me because he lived through my addictions with me for 20 years.
Right.
And he would always say, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just stop? He said, I don't understand it. He said, you're an intelligent woman. You've got so much going for you. Just stop. And I couldn't stop. That was the thing. I mean, it's like people who are chronically depressed. They say, I have so much to not be depressed about, but I'm still depressed. Right? So there's no rhyme or reason. I wish I could wave a magic wand and figure it all out. But the only thing we know about addiction is that it's a complex condition. I call my condition a disease of emotions. I was incapable of dealing with my emotions without drugs and alcohol in the mix. I needed drugs and alcohol to even me out, to make me comfortable in my skin. I think maybe early on, I was probably an introvert trying to be extroverted, and drugs and alcohol made it easier. And it's progressive.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but so on Soaring Profits here, I've been talking about my recovery because I was addicted to food, heavily addicted to food. I know it's not as bad as maybe alcohol or drugs or whatever, but it really did a number on my body because I was 356 pounds, and I've since learned. So what I had to do is I had to go back. Part of it was childhood. I had to go back to my childhood and understand that the reason I was so addicted to food, and part of that was because the good memories I had of my family were linked to food. I think a lot of it was TV shows where, everyone was happy when you're eating chips and everyone was happy when you're eating pop. And I didn't have a lot of happiness going on. So I linked food and happiness. So for me, I had to reprogram my brain to not link that food with happiness. I had to link it with other things. So I'm not sure if that's what you're doing. So that's like a cognitive way. It's kind of like classical conditioning, really, is what it is. I was conditioned to think that food brought joy. So I had to condition myself to think that running brought joy, that other things brought joy besides food. And food really, I had to really train my mind to realize that food did not bring joy. It was fake joy.
Now
what you're talking about, or is it different than that?
That's a perfect way to describe it, James, because I think it's a deregulation of the chemicals that send that pleasure message to our brain.
Right.
Our brain, what I have learned about the brain in my addiction recovery is that our brain is a chemical organ, and it's running on 80 different chemicals. So, we've got this pharmacy running around in our brain, in our mind. And for me, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think we're learning more and more that there is a deregulation of healthy dopamine levels that exist in people who are challenged with addictions. And it doesn't matter what the addiction is.
Right.
It can be gambling, food, sex, gaming, drugs, alcohol. It's the same pleasure centers are affected. Right. And it all has to do with dopamine.
Yeah.
So I think it's that dopamine reward axis that is broken in our brain. And it can be fixed with a persistent willingness to exert consistent efforts to help ourselves by retraining our brain with repetitive exercises. So I like to think that, this is not a boxed program. It's individualized for the person because we're all different, and people who come here are coming with a different set of baggage with them. So for me, it's trying to get to the cause. And once we get to the cause, because the addiction is a symptom.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
We're self-medicating something else. It's finding what that something else is. And then when we can uncover that, we've got a better chance of resolving it and helping melt it away so we can then go back to our life and deal with life on life's terms without taking the harmful substances and behaviors that are not making life manageable.
Right. So first someone comes, and they have to come on their own. Like, that's the way all recovery works. It's not like parents or wives drop off their husbands at the door and go, here, deal with it. They have to come willing to change, right? You have to have that willingness to change. They have to have that point of impact that makes them want to make a difference in their life. And
That's the hardest step.
Is a really small window, right? You only have like so much time. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. You're just going to go back to your addiction. So they show up and they see you or maybe whoever else. And can you give us like a little process of what that looks like? Do they move in, or is it something they do from home? Or
it's funny you said that, James, because because I had decided that, I needed to make a change, and I had everything ready to go into rehab, and I get on the plane and I got drunk on the plane on the way to rehab. So even after you've made the decision to go, you're still questioning that, am I ready? Because we're giving up a best friend. How are we going to survive without this best friend that has been keeping us safe? So the intake here is pretty exhaustive. I talk to people at least 3 times at length to make sure that they're not throwing their money away. And because it's a big investment to make in yourself and your recovery. And I want to make sure that you're making the right decision and for the right reasons. So coming here for somebody else is not going to work.
Nope.
It's got to be for you. And having somebody else pay for it is not acceptable.
Wow.
Now that's an interesting piece to that.
Yeah.
Now,
why is that?
Parents want to throw money at the problem. They say, just fix it. And that's not the way to fix it.
Yes. For instance, like an example that comes to mind, I've had, friends of mine that have children that have had, drug and alcohol problems and have looked at, counseling and rehabs and things like that. And that's what it was. It was that they're like, we'll throw any amount of money at it. And they ended up relapsing and relapsing and relapsing and relapsing. And again, I think it comes into that buy-in factor, both figuratively and literally. You need to have that tie to success. That's a really interesting aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think you need some skin in the game for sure. And I think that's probably why the Canadian system that we have is not working for people. And the governments keep throwing millions at it and adding time to it. If 30 days doesn't work, we'll make it 60 days and 90 days and 120 days. And we'll just keep throwing money at it, hoping it works. And they give groups of people a boxed program. And there's very little one-on-one contact with anybody who can actually help you and empathize with you and take you through different exercises that might give you a breakthrough and give you some clarity on how you can maybe start a healing journey. There's none of that. You're in a group setting. It's like a dorm. It's like going to a college dorm. Sometimes you're even sharing a bedroom and a bathroom. Like, ugh, gross. I wouldn't be able to do it. And I think a lot of people are not able to do it. It's not a conducive atmosphere for healing, but it's free.
Right. And you stumbled into a perfect thing that I tend to have problems with as a fairly, fiscal conservative in my political views, struggling out how and what implementation we have in our Canadian system. And there was a snippet that you had said earlier in what you'd said is that you got on a plane when you were heading to rehab. Can I ask you, did you leave the country to go for rehab?
No, I was living in Spain at the time. Spain actually helped me spiral downward very quickly because my 2 favorite things, wine and brandy, were cheaper than water.
Yeah.
So if anything, it helped me spiral very, very quickly.
And a little bit of beautiful music and dancing. The perfect mix.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Especially if we're hoping for happiness.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Well, so go ahead, James.
So you wouldn't even allow someone who with government funding to do the program.
I don't get involved with the government funding. No, I'm not involved with insurance programs or anything. You need the cash.
You have to come in with your own money and lay it on the table and say you're ready to do it.
Right.
And you have to be ready and willing and able. And like, do you ask them why do you want to do it? Like, do you like?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, it's an exhaustive.
What was your goal moment?
Yeah, it's an exhaustive program.
Yeah.
It's an exhaustive intake process as well. And, absolutely. I need to know that you're motivated to do the work. It's work. You come Friday after work, and it's exhaustive, 12 to 14-hour days with me, knee to knee. And it's a beautiful place to be. You have your own private apartment, your own bedroom, your own bathroom, your own kitchen, beautiful gourmet meals that my husband provides. So it's really a nice, safe space to come and heal yourself for 1 week. You come Friday after work. It's exhaustive. By the time you leave the following Friday after lunch, you have an aftercare program that is going to take you through a new way of thinking, a new way of living, and a new way of being.
So only one person at a time.
Oh, yes, definitely. That's the only way it works.
I didn't even catch that till just now. So one person shows up to you each week who wants to recover, goes through all the things, and sometimes you turn them away. And so basically what you do at first is you find out their cognitive thoughts on how they see their addiction.
Well, yeah, it's important to know how it started, how long it's been with them, and what's motivating them now to make the change. Why now?
And then do you like build in another tool bag, if you will, a new set of tools that will stimulate them the same way? Or is it like how does the process go from there? Sorry.
The tools are going to be different for everyone.
Totally. Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
So
but that's what you're doing.
Yep. I think, even if they want to pursue a spiritual program, I love 12-step programs. I think the peer support is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's the best personal development program on the planet. And I love their snappy slogans. Take what you need and leave the rest.
Yeah.
Right. And 24 hours. That's all you got to do is take life at 24 hours at a time. I love introducing people to the Tibetan practice of the cup of life and death. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people think it's morbid. But it kind of follows the philosophies around 12-step programs that you've only got 24 hours. You only have to stop for doing what's killing you for 24 hours at a time. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just get through 24 hours, a minute at a time for 24 hours, and you're good. So the Tibetans have this ritual. At the end of the day, they literally take a little cup and they turn it upside down. And it represents not only the end of their day, but the end of their life. I love that, because you have to then take stock of your day then. And when you turn that cup upside down, that's it. You're done. You've done the best you can for the day and you're ready to die. When I go to bed and close my eyes, I'm not expecting to wake up. When I wake up, it's like, yay. And I turn the cup up and you give thanks for another day. Oh, I get another 24 hours. I love that ritual.
That is pretty cool. Living 24 hours at a time in a visual way. Yeah, because you get to empty the cup at the end of the day and say, did I live my day to my fullest? And go, well, I guess that's it, and go to sleep, and then wake up and go, hey, I'm awake. I guess this day I could live myself better than yesterday because I remember what I did yesterday, and that wasn't enough. That's amazing. What a great way to see things. Yeah, no, absolutely. I have a 7-day domino journey is what I call it. And that's kind of part of it. It's just like working through things one day at a time. Once you start like making one change in your life, it's like a domino effect, and they just keep on falling because you get a momentum behind you. Like I was talking to someone today. So I run, Tanya, I run and I was talking about, I'm going to do a half marathon, and I was working with some great people, and I was really worried because they were trying to convince me to do a half marathon. I'm like, there's no way. I can't run 21 kilometers. You guys are insane. And they said, just come with us and run 21 kilometers just for fun. Let's just do it. So I ran 21 kilometers, and that whole time I was in mental battle. I should just stop. I should just stop. And I got past the 21 kilometers. And since then, it's not even a thought. I just go and run it because I know I can do it now. It's just getting past that point of knowing you can do it. Once you know you can do it, just do it, right? And I think that's part of my addiction and stuff. I learned, if I can get through a month, then I know I've done a month, so I can do it. And if I fail, which you do, You just don't throw it all away. Right? You know, so say today I had a pizza and ice cream and a bag of chips, because that's not uncommon. This is a normal like food addiction. I had a bad food addiction. I would eat all that in like one sitting. If that happened today, well, tomorrow when I woke up, I'd be like, okay, I messed up yesterday, but today's new and I don't need to do that anymore. That was a mistake. I can move on because I know how to do it. I've already done it. You know what I mean?
That is the perfect attitude to have, right? Every setback is a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, and then you start to recognize the thought patterns that are leading into these setbacks.
Totally.
And then you can catch them earlier and you can think, oh no, wait now. Instead of having the bag of chips and the ice cream, maybe you'll have the bag of chips as now you're thinking about the last thought process that you had. And you can walk away after the bag of chips.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
It gets easier every time.
Yeah, and it does get easier because you understand more and more of what's driving you towards it, and then I got to the point where it was, okay, I want a bag of chips. I'm going to stop. Why do I want it? I'm going to like really consider, am I hungry? Because if I'm hungry, then I'll go have a bag of chips. But if it's because of something else, what is that? And I need to understand that. And you know, if it's because I'm bored, because I'm not happy right now, that's no reason to eat a bag of chips. That's silly. Go do something else. And that's literally how I got over what I was doing. No, I think what you're doing is wonderful. I think you're right. I am a big supporter of the Canadian medical system. I think it's wonderful. Pat and I argue about this all the time. I think that without it, a lot of people would miss out. They would lose. I don't think, like for yours example, like for yours, there are tons of people out there that I know right now that are addicted to things that there's no way they could access it. But they can access maybe a fallible system that, yeah, you might not, 90% of the people that go to it, it doesn't work, sure. But you got 10% that do. And to me, that's worth it.
So time out. So if I might.
Yeah,
so
go.
This is where James and I have these just bare knuckle brawls about that exact sentence. If 90% doesn't work, why are we funding it to that level? And this is where
it's not even 90%. I would say it's a 98% failure rate.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at it. And Tanya, I appreciate what you do and why you do it. And you're doing it for a number of fantastic reasons. I look at our healthcare system in Canada as a floundering system that has been dead. It just won't lay down for a very long time. I've watched it with my family. I've watched it with family members that are, you know, very sick, like deathly sick, and how broken it was, especially going through COVID. Now, when you add a mental health piece to this, that's really the addiction line that is being told out there, is that this is a mental health problem. And there's a lot of stigma, whether we like it or not, around professionals. For instance, law enforcement background, when you end up in a situation where you carry a gun around all day, and now because I have a problem with alcohol, per se, now I have a mental health problem. Does that end up in court? Does that end up on my employment record? Does that hinder me from further progress? Now, do you have any individuals that are in that, you know, first responder line of work that come to you for exactly that type of thing, where they don't want to end up in the healthcare system?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a huge stigma still around addiction. It's still the most stigmatized condition on the planet.
Right.
And it's baffling to me because it is a mental health issue. We have to stop treating it like a moral failing and start treating it for what it is. It's a mental health issue. And the problem with group programs that we keep throwing millions of dollars at is it's because it's the only model available, sadly. And there's no accountability. So I know people who have gone through some of the local facilities here. They can go through 3-4 times a year, and there's no accountability whatsoever. Nobody says when you're back for the 4th time in a year, well, hold on, there's something wrong with this picture.
Right.
Like, why isn't it working? So there's no accountability there. And, you know, the failure rate is extravagant.
Right.
You know, there's no justification. I don't know why taxpayers are putting up with it. no justification for the money we're throwing at it.
Right.
And we just keep throwing money at it for something that doesn't work. Now, finally, we're starting to talk about aftercare programs for people so that they can stay engaged in something after they leave the facility.
Yeah.
So, it is getting better. It's a slow process. So I just wanted to bring something different to the whole recovery horizon, hoping that, it might provide some enlightenment on a broken system.
Now, how
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. I think what you're doing is exactly what we should be doing everywhere. Like the one-on-one, the finding out the reason for the drinking and helping them, replace it. I think all of that stuff that you're doing is beautiful. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that there are people in this world that just can't afford it. There's no way they can do it. And until I agree with you. I think that we need to, as a system, really look at what we do for mental health, because what we're doing for mental health is just babysitting right now. We're just trying to keep them away from general population for when they're in crisis, and then we put them back when they're not in crisis. That's all we're doing now. It's catch and release. Whenever there's a crisis, we'll put them behind closed doors for 24 hours. And then we hand them all these pamphlets saying, go see this counselor, whatever, and then send them back out on the street. And we really do nothing for them. I get that. I understand that. I also understand that and I've never been to one. So really, you have all the knowledge. I don't. But I get that going to a rehab in Canada is not the best thing. All I'm saying is, my point is, if you help 2 people a year, to me, that's important. To me, that changes it, because those 2 people, Tanya, may change the world. They may,
I agree with you, James.
Like yourself, because you have recovered, because you were an alcoholic and you have recovered, you are changing the world. Right?
You touched on an important point, James, that the system is sadly broken, and most people can't afford the kind of care that I'm providing. And there's a lot of executively appointed programs I see cropping up across Canada now, because there's a huge growth industry happening.
Right.
And so there's going to be a financial roadblock to the majority of people, absolutely. Mm-hmm. What I'm suggesting is that, there needs to be some kind of accountability factor in a system where the help that we're providing is free, but there still needs to be some kind of an accountability system involved. And I think what we're seeing with people who are, challenged in other areas, socio-political challenges, affordable housing is an issue. We put people, if you put people in a 30-day program and then set them back into a life where they don't have a steady job, they don't have stable housing, they're going to be back. And that's what we're seeing.
Tanya, I couldn't agree with you more. And James, I'm sure, is just dismayed that I've disagreed with him once again on this. But in this situation, I relate what you're doing as kind of first mover, right? What you're doing is you're doing something, and I'll relate it in the corporate world as like Tesla. Tesla comes out with a car. They come out with a Model S. It's a $200,000 car. You want the car? It's a fantastic vehicle. We are the prime mover. We are the first mover in this industry. We are going to get you results. Everyone else, there's a bus. There's all kinds of things. But what we're doing is we're building programming that works. We're building a car that is going to end up changing the automotive sector. And I think that there is a value in that. And if you're looking at people that are looking for buy-in facet, that starts with that. If you're looking for results, we talk about fitness on this page. We talk about personal well-being. We talk about so many different things, right? But it's that prime mover aspect. If you want the top fitness instructors, that you have to go to where they are, right? You can't go to your corner. You can't call Uncle Tim. That didn't work for you. So if you're literally at the death's door and your life is falling apart and it's fading before you, that initiative, I think, is an important aspect. And I'm not saying that it's for everybody, That's not what Tanya's out to do. As much as you're out to save the world, and I appreciate what you're doing, you can't save everybody, but you're solving those problems at a level that is more in depth and intrusive into people's lives where they need to make that. And I celebrate what you're doing, because when private sector gets involved, I clap, I cheer it. I think we end up with greater results because they're results driven. If Tanya sucks at what Tanya does, the market will kick you aside. Whereas our system right now at 98% failure rates, and again, I'm taking your numbers. I'm not sure.
We don't have the stats
I look
here.
around.
Yeah.
I look around and I look at a 98% failure rate.
Yeah.
There's no market dynamic saying, oh, this sucks. It's taxpayers going, what are we doing? And we're not even yelling that loud yet, like you've said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm also trying to pave the way for a new approach of thinking that recovery takes 30 or 60 or 90 or 120 days. Recovery doesn't take long. It takes persistent willingness to exert consistent efforts to help yourself. And the 1 week program that I've created is something that I would have loved to have had for me. I didn't need a month in a rehab studying the big book of AA. What I needed was an immersive program where I could go with somebody one-on-one, face-to-face, knee-to-knee, and talk and have somebody empathize and work me through all the crap from the past that I was dragging my ass through life with all this baggage. And you can do it in a week. Absolutely. That's why I created it. I wanted something for professionals who couldn't take 30 days away from work, but they can take a week. They can come Friday after work, spend an exhaustive week, eat really well, but spend an exhaustive week with me doing the work. And then they're prepared to go back to their life with a toolbox that's filled with things that work for them. There's hundreds of tools that we can choose to use in our recovery. The key is to find what works for you and then do more of it. And that's why I'm probably one. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only ones in Ontario, for sure, that offers a lifetime aftercare program.
I think you're absolutely right on the short 7 day. Like, it's not rocket science. The more simple you can make it, the more people will do it. Like, I have a couple of programs that I call 7 day programs that I just released to the video universe on YouTube. So like, there's a Soaring Profit, there's a Keto one, learning how to eat keto in 7 days, learning how to like change or be goal centered in 7 days. Because I think 7 days is right. I think whatever you can do in 7 days, you can repeat in 7 days. And you just keep on repeating a 7 day cycle, you're going to be successful. You know, if you can get past 30 days, you're going to have a successful life. Like, whatever you can make 30 days is going to be with you forever. And it's going to be beautiful. So I totally agree with you there. What I was wondering while we were talking, Pat kind of touched on it, that they go back to where they were. And so that was kind of a thing for me. And I talk about that a little bit on the Soaring Profits, is that you really do have to look at the people around you and see if they're enabling you or they're driving you. And so the people around me really changed as I went. Like, I left the people that just wanted to sit on the couch and eat nachos. And I left the people that just wanted to smoke weed and play video games. And I left the people and I found the people that want to run. And I found Pat, who wants to make money.
I can't get rid of
him. She can't get rid of me. Yeah. So is that something you get into at some point? Like, that you have to really go home and you have to change. Like, you can't keep on going and doing those things that you were doing. We
become the company we keep.
Yes.
Well, you need to keep the company of people who you want to be like. So absolutely, you have to change. So not only are you changing the habits of the addiction, you're changing the habits of your life. And that includes, sadly, saying goodbye to a lot of the relationships you had.
Yeah.
How do your clients take that? Because that's obviously, you know, as much as the substances that are involved in individuals' lives, or, you know, food, whatever. I guess that's a substance. the relationships, the employment scenarios, the situations that hey, the boys go
bad,
right, but the boys go out for a beer after the office, right? And now that puts my employment. Like, how do you handle breaking down those barriers and understanding that for your clients?
Well, they have to do what's going to work for them. So they need to be realistic about the life that they're going back to, and how are they going to navigate the life and the relationships and not go back to the behaviors that were killing them.
Right. Now, do you believe in like a total abstainment of all substances, or do you kind of do like because again, and this is a question that I wanted to ask you a little earlier and we kind of got sidetracked, is that I'm sure that you are praised in many circles and that you are probably blacklisted in certain circles of this industry because of your approach. Now, do you find that I know harm reduction is something that is I find somewhat problematic in and of itself for me, but like, what does that look like for you? Are you saying you need to be abstinent from this moment on, or what does that look like?
Ideally, this is an abstinent oriented program, but harm reduction is sometimes the only thing that's going to work for some people. It depends on the person. All addictions are different, all people are different, and their recovery is going to be different.
Right. That's interesting. And again, Tanya, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not. James and I have been doing a little bit of work with an organization in our community around tiny homes for the homeless. And, realistically, at the end of the day, we're dealing with a mental health crisis, not a housing crisis.
Yeah.
Quite literally. A lot of these individuals have all of the supports that they could possibly have as far as the financial things. It's just their money goes to other things, right? Because of the mental health and the addiction aspect. And that's where, we get a lot of pushback. Again, I'm the conservative guy, mostly being polite and a-hole most of the time for a lot of people. But I'm kind of the facet of is that if you're looking for help, if you're really interested in this, is that we have to make hard choices. So what does that look like? And that sounds kind of like what you folks are doing at Red Roof.
Yeah.
And they're not hard choices. They're choices. So let's be careful how we're wording stuff as well, right? So yeah, it all starts with if it is what you say it is. So if you think it's going to be hard and you say it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be hard.
They're literally choices that people make every day.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Not hard choices at all. And like I said, with the running 21 kilometers, I saw it as a wall. That's how I saw it. And it wasn't until someone brought me through that wall and went, it's not a fucking wall. Like, it's a bridge. Like, you're on the other side already. Like, look back behind you. It's behind you. It wasn't until someone led me by the hand through that I was able to go, oh yeah, that wasn't hard. And that means the next thing isn't going to be hard either. And I think that's awesome. Yeah, that's totally true.
One of my favorite exercises to do with people is something called a cost benefit analysis, because if you're not looking at the benefits of your addiction, then you're just going to be swimming in that what we call denial is more than a big river in Egypt. So you need to look at the benefits of your addiction, and because obviously there's benefits, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it.
And you're at a position in your life where you're having that pivot moment, that rock bottom, that point of impact, as James likes to call it. And whether you're looking down the barrel of a divorce, you're looking at the barrel of all of the other things that could be affecting your life right now. The cost of doing this, the personal time that it takes, the growth opportunity to do this, it's exponential in return if you take that opportunity to do that. I love that. I think that's great. And anytime that there's a decent ROI, I'm in for you. So I appreciate where you're coming from on that. That's great. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing, Tanya, you kind of looking at some of the things you have, and we're going to pull your website up here shortly. But one of the things that you kind of touched on is that you have a pretty fantastic experience with your father. And I wanted to touch base on that. He seemed to be a pretty magical man in your life. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yes, he was. Actually, I wrote 2 books in his honor. He was such a great guy. My dad was a single father in the 70s when single parents were mostly women in those days. And, he he was encouraged by his mother and mother-in-law to, let us take care of the kids. And he said, nope, they're my responsibility, and I'm going to raise them as my children. And he did. But he also worked 16-hour days. Yeah. So emotionally, he was unavailable most times, but, did his best with what he had. Yeah. But he was an avid reader, thankfully. And he loved reading ancient wisdom. He was a big Stoic philosopher. Okay. And I used to jokingly call him Philosopher Dad, because anytime I went to him with teenage angst, he would spit out this line of philosophy, hoping that it would solve everything. Because that's all he had time to do as well, right?
Right, yeah.
And I remember when I was about, 9 or 10, I came and I was being bullied at school, and I came crying to him and said, Daddy, why are those girls being so mean to me? And he said, oh, sweetheart, the mills of the gods grind slowly but exceedingly fine.
And at 9, you knew exactly what he meant. I love it.
That was my philosopher dad.
It definitely was relevant, but not understandable at all.
So you're talking to two single fathers. Myself, I've raised my daughter. I have a 13-year-old daughter. She's getting older and older. She had her grade 8 graduation photos today. So it was a big day at our place. Everything was primmed and proper, and she looked fantastic heading out the door this morning. But I'm a single father. I've raised my daughter. James very much with his children was, the prime mover in that situation. And I myself, my father more or less raised me. I lived with my father most of the time. And, we've talked at great length about the roles of father and what that means in again, I have a daughter, what that means in a daughter's life and the relationships that establishes and the boundaries and the situations that makes sure and sets up for later in life. And I'm sure if my daughter was another one of these squares here, she'd be like, oh, he's so hard on me. He's terrible. And the eye roll. But that's in a lot of ways that how I show my love. And we work really, really hard as a family. And I'm very proud of my daughter. She's an excellent athlete, an excellent student. She's a great kid. But it's one of those things that for myself, much like it sounds like your father, is that it was, I don't have an opportunity to stop and smell the roses. I got to keep my feet moving. And it's hustling. And the things that I've been able to accomplish in my life are only because of my daughter. Like every aspect of my life is totally driven to make sure that she's successful. And I talked about before is that as a launching pad. My daughter is going to have every opportunity in the world, but she's going to hustle for them. And that's my whole thing. So I love hearing stories of fathers. I love hearing stories about single fathers, and the differences in the way parenting happens between mothers and fathers is drastic. Each has their place, but there's a special spot in my heart for single fathers out there as well that are doing it.
Just to be clear, though, I wasn't a single dad. I was married at the time. It's just that I was the prime kind of caregiver because I was with my kids every evening. And it was like Pat said, that I was just busy. Like I worked all day. I came home and I did what I did with my kids, and it was pushing them. And so I would imagine probably Pat and I talked about this. We did a whole podcast about it. It was less nurture and more lesson. Like it was more like, okay, it's time to sit down. We're going to get our homework done. We're going to do all that, and then we'll have some time to play. You have to be outcome driven. Outcome driven is what we built, right? And it's a little bit harder because when they fall down and they cry, you still are like, oh, I hope you're okay. But it's like, okay, now let's go. It's not like let's cuddle for a half hour on the couch. No, we don't have time for that. It's time to go. Come on, let's do this. It's not stop crying. Like I never did that to my kids. Don't cry or anything like that. But still, it's a different kind of love. Did you find that? Again, my dad raised me too. My mom was a nurse, so never was home. And my dad raised me, and he was very much don't cry, don't show emotion, that kind of dad. But I was born in the 70s, and that's what they did. So what kind of experience did you have with your dad, besides the philosophy side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a single dad working ridiculous hours. He was hardly there. I can't even imagine. I mean, I never had the courage to have kids. Right. Because I had the responsibility of my baby sister very young. Wow. And never wanted it again. Yeah. I think it's the most important job in the world to be a parent. And yeah, he did the best he could, but he was emotionally unavailable.
Sure.
Well, he was dealing with his own addictions, his own childhood trauma.
Right.
And, that's, we reach a point, I think, in adult life where we have to forgive our parents for not being the parent that we needed them to be when we needed them to be it.
That's it.
Absolutely. That's another thing Pat and I have talked about. Like, once you hit 19, 20, it's time to stop blaming your parents for your life. Like, you can start making your own choices and do your own things and start moving forward. You don't get to blame your parents anymore, because you can make your own opportunities now, all of your own opportunities.
One of the best lessons my dad ever taught me was when I was in grade 10. I was 15 and I thought I knew everything I needed to know. And I hadn't done a lick of work in school all year. I was drunk and stoned most of it.
Yeah.
And I came with 3 months left of the year. I came in like a big drama queen and I threw my books on the floor and I said, I quit. I'm not going back there. And my dad had just gotten back from another exhaustive day. And he looked at me, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. And he didn't even miss a breath. He didn't blink or anything. He said, wow. He said, that is an adult decision. And you know what? It's going to come with adult consequences.
Wow.
So I'm going to give you a month to find a job, and then your room and board is $75 a week. Good luck. And he walked away.
That's awesome.
I love that.
And that's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about. That's our response. Yeah.
Yep.
See, I love that, because it's so based in natural consequences.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm such a firm believer in that with my daughter, who, again, I hope she's watching it there. The eye roll is probably
totally, for sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I firmly believe in that. Is that my daughter at 13 years old, she got a job last summer. She was coaching gymnastics at a local club. And all of a sudden, she just like checks her bank account and she's got all this money. And it's like shopping spree. And I'm like, whoa, sit down. We're going to work through this. And it's like, you can go, you can treat yourself, you can have something nice, but what's your plan? Because if you go out and you have a whole brand new wardrobe from Lululemon because you go out and decide to spend thousands of dollars on yourself in that situation, when you're a year down the road and those clothes don't fit you anymore, or the fashion's changed, or you're not excited about that anymore, that was a fleeting response to your hard work. So what is the natural consequence to that decision? And it's amazing how they learn super fast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always remind people of the marshmallow test from the 60s, where they put 5-year-olds in a room all alone and put a marshmallow in front of them and said, if you don't eat that marshmallow, I'll come back with another marshmallow and you can have 2. And the kids would be looking at it and they'd be touching it with their tongue and they'd squeeze it. Yeah. But it was an outcome study. So they followed these kids for 20 years. And the kids who managed to postpone the gratification, like, to delay that instant gratification, they had a better socioeconomic position in 20 years later. So if we can teach kids early on to delay gratification, to direct that rational analysis inward, like cognitive therapies have taught me to do, they've got a far better chance of making better choices.
And the thing that drives me the most crazy, we've known that for years and years and years and years, and yet our school system teaches the opposite way. It teaches with instant gratification all the time. It's the worst. Like it frustrates me. Like it's and not to mention our phones and our tablets and TV, and it's all instant gratification. Like it's really hurting our youth, because our youth can't even problem solve. They can't play. Like I was talking to someone the other day. So mini sticks is big again. So mini sticks is basically hockey outside. They can't get through a whole game with hockey without someone like throwing a massive fit and getting super upset. And it's not just one person. It's like the whole group is upset. And I said, I remember playing in the church parking lot, no teacher watching us. Like we're behind, the priest would come out every once in a while and hang out with us and play hockey. And we were like checking each other into the boards. Literally one of my buddies broke his arm and the next day came back with the cast and played hockey with us. It was just but we could problem solve. because there wasn't someone there as soon as there was a problem. And now, as soon as there's a problem, a teacher's there, or because we're so afraid of getting sued.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from teachers, that kids now don't have resilience, and yeah, it's not a good
why
thing.
do we do that? And Tanya, I'll pose this to you. Obviously, this is your business. You're dealing with impulse control with your clients. You're dealing with this on a daily basis. Do you think that over the next generation of individuals that have grown up with 6-inch screens in their hand, what do you think that leads for your business model going forward?
Well, I have to say that I was a driving instructor for a year, and
brave woman.
well, I had a brake on my side. I don't think I would have done it without the brake. But I have to say, the 16-year-olds today are head and shoulders above what I was at 16.
Interesting.
So I have great faith in our youth.
So we're not doomed.
I don't think we're doomed
So
at all.
do you think it's because of the information they have on hand, or why are they head and shoulders above?
I think, well, because of parents like you.
Thank you.
But,
Carlo, are you listening? You better be listening. Yeah.
you know what? I'll clip this and I'll send it to her.
Yeah.
I think
like
parental influence is huge for the 16-year-olds that now, of course, I was with the higher end driving school. So, the parents had a little bit better socioeconomic position as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that as well.
Absolutely.
But don't forget, this is a 24/7 hit of dopamine.
Right.
Oh,
and parents who put restrictions on this early, I don't think it's any coincidence that people like Bill Gates and all of those techie guys, they don't let their kids have technology. Absolutely. And there's a reason for that, because it's marketing manipulation. Kids are now inundated with thousands of messages every day that are telling them they're not good enough until they go out and buy something or take something to feel better. So I think if they are able to self-regulate and be aware of those manipulated messages and just build their resilience to delay gratification, and have parents like you encouraging them to step back, put it in draft, just wait 24 hours. And if you still really want something, then we'll talk about it then.
Well, and a great pivot there for kind of what I talk about with the profiteers out here about the economics of the world, the economy, and that is that we've watched over the last week here where Facebook has been a collapsing entity over the last 6 to 8 months. Facebook stock has plummeted in price. And the reason for that is that the Facebook model, their business model, was being attacked by entities like Snapchat and TikTok in China. So what they were doing is they were realizing that, okay, we had a whole generation of individuals that were using Facebook, communicating. They built the social media world that we have now. They were the first mover, the prime mover. Now we have a situation where the second generation looks at Facebook as, what's that? And the reason is that you have, again, Snapchat, TikTok, these other things that are 12, 15-second snaps of dopamine every time. And they end up in this rabbit hole lost in 100% marketing. Facebook is a advertisement business. They are not in the business of anything other than marketing and advertisement. And that's why over the last 6 or 8 months, obviously there's other economic things that are going on, but companies, investors are pulling out of Facebook in a very real way, saying your model is dead unless you pivot. And it's because you are outdated and there are alternatives to you that are faster and a younger demographic that we want to capture.
And we're going to catch more people.
Yeah, I think the danger of
more views.
Yeah, the danger of things like TikTok and Snapchat is that I don't want to get into politics too much, but I mean,
we love it.
Let's do it.
Well, I remember as a journalist in the 80s. When
were you born yet, Pat? I was just wondering.
86. Thank you.
I was wondering if Pat was born yet. Sorry.
in the
build them at
80s,
ages all the time.
I watched our political leaders sell us out to China to start offshoring our manufacturing, to start encouraging kids to go to university instead of go to trade school. So I could see the writing on the wall then. And I'm thinking, somebody hasn't done a cost benefit analysis.
No.
What is this going to look like in 20 or 30 years? And we're seeing that now, because now I've lived long enough to see what the ramifications are of those bad decisions that were made. So now we've got no tradespeople, we've got no manufacturing. We're depending on countries like China, who have an appalling human rights record. Why would we even be in bed with people like that? I don't know. But we've allowed it to happen. And now we're allowing our minds to be controlled somewhat by entities who want to dumb us down. So things like Snapchat and TikTok are dumbing us down. Our attention span is shrinking. We are reprogramming our brain for those dopamine hits, and it's not a good direction to go in.
Well, now that we've dug into the politics and you've broke the ice there, now that we're all comfortable, you were telling us a little bit before we came on here about, why your career. And do you mind sharing that story with the profiteers out there?
We may get canceled. I don't know.
It started when I was a reporter in Toronto, and I used to recognize that we were profiling young Black men. And when I made a point of it, and I said, I'm not going to tag my crime story saying, now we're looking for 3 suspects described as, early 20s, Black, wearing jeans and a hoodie. I said, we've just described every young Black man in Toronto. Right. And I'm just not going to take part in that anymore. So I was blacklisted for that. That was 1 score against me there. So I just wouldn't participate in that anymore. And then
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So what was your alternative to that? How did you produce the same news story without the description?
I just wouldn't tag it.
Right. You just say that today there was a robbery.
Yeah, police are looking for suspects.
Yeah. So obviously that was a problematic and a career choice that you made. But why did you feel pressure? Who's pressuring you? Why would they pressure you as you're a reporter, you're a capable and competent young reporter? Why were they pressuring you to make sure that those statements were included?
Well, because everybody has a boss, right? There's a narrative to every corporation.
Right.
And what drives a corporation? Profits. Where are the profits coming from? Advertisers, investors, shareholders. And there's a narrative that goes with that. And you're expected to follow the narrative. I mean, that's where the adage comes from. Toe the corporate line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just shut up and do your job. Toe the corporate line. And I was just never very good at doing that. I was always a shit disturber. I was called the shit disturber. And it didn't fare well for my career, but I managed to have a successful career in mostly radio for 22 years.
Yep.
And I ended up as a news director at a heritage radio station in small town Ontario when George Bush started the illegal war on Iraq under the guise of looking for weapons of mass destruction.
That pandemic.
And I knew when 9/11 happened, what was happening, right? Yeah. It was all to create this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I call it the FUD factor around Middle Eastern people and terrorism. And, there was more people killed by gun violence than terrorism ever. There's still more people killed by gun violence than terrorism. Yeah. But still the narrative is that everybody from the Middle East is a terrorist.
So now this leads me down such a rabbit hole. And I even said when we first started, I'm like, you and we got to sit down. We got to, chat further because I love that stuff. Yeah. Because I would argue the last 10 years for myself, I'm 37 years old, 36. I'm really dating myself here. 36. I'm 36 years old, and I've always, my father was big on knowing what's going on in the world and following politics, reading the newspaper, being involved and being able to communicate what's happening in the world. It's a big thing. I think it's important. And over the last 10 years specifically, maybe it's just that I was old enough to see through the bullshit, but the mainstream media has zero credibility anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah,
to have, and
it used to be a vocation that had some integrity, some credence of, I don't know, pride.
Right.
I saw a news story yesterday. I don't know, this week. I saw a news story this week. The news reporter said, "We haven't had time to check the details yet, so we're not sure that it's real, but this is what happened." And I'm like, no one heard that first part. All they heard is this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And you think that you've cleared yourself by saying we don't even know what fuck we're talking about. And that drives me crazy. When was it okay to start talking about people like you have valid information before you have valid information? Didn't it used to be that you had to have 3 different point sources?
Well, James, in my career, it was mostly coming up with embellished facts and sensational headlines.
If it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads. I remember being one of the first Toronto reporters on the scene of the Swiss air crash at Peggy's Cove in 1998. And cell phones were just coming out, and they were about that big, and they were very expensive. So I had to use a payphone to file my reports. Yeah. And after covering the despair for 2 days, I was falling into a deep depression myself. And everybody I talked to in Halifax, they all wanted to do the same thing. They all wanted to open their hearts and homes to everybody who was coming from overseas to collect what little remained of their loved ones. Yeah. So I made that my story on day 3.
Right.
How Haligonians had gathered, and they were sending buses to the airport to collect people who were coming from overseas. And I even had a bagpiper playing in the background as I'm filing my report. And after I finished, it was like a 2.5, 3 minute report. The producer said, "Oh God, hold on. She wants to talk to you." So the news director got on the phone, and I don't know why I expected something different from a woman, but I did at the time. So I got the phone, and she said, WTF, before WTF was an acronym. What is this crap? I want to see the blood and feel the pain. And I took the receiver away from my ear, and something psychically clicked in my mind then. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. But then I was overwhelmed with this fear of, like, what will I do if I don't do this? Right? This has defined me for most of my adult life.
Yeah.
So I ended up staying in that vocation for another few years until 2002, when I became news director of the Heritage Station. And the motto was, where local news comes first. And I thought, oh, finally, yay, I'll have some autonomy over what we're broadcasting.
No.
No.
Still no.
No. When George Bush declared his illegal war on Iraq, the day of shock and awe, I had started my newscast with an interview I had done with the director of the local Red Cross about what we were doing on a humanitarian level to help all the innocent people who were being bombed under the guise of looking for weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. And my boss called me after the newscast, and he said, "Where's our war coverage?" And I said, "There's all kinds of it on every other network in the world, and I am not perpetuating American propaganda anymore. I won't do it." And he said, "Well, you better find yourself another job then." And I said, "Yeah, that's the plan."
So for yourself as a young woman in probably a fairly male-dominated career when you were first starting out, that takes a lot of guts.
I didn't think it did at the time. I thought, talk about mental health, right? I mean, my addictions were spiraling out of control even at that time, right? I was driving to work with vodka in my water bottle.
Wow.
So yeah,
So maybe you weren't fully present when you were making those decisions.
Yeah, and I think not only was it feeding my addictions, it was chipping away at my soul. I
Yeah.
just couldn't face it anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm. So you
That's so
left that what year? Because that was your final. You're
2002.
done. 2002. And then what did you do? Like, because like we talk about those moments, like those points of impact, those things that are out of your control, and then you're like out on an island, terrified. What do
Mhm.
you do?
The only thing I was qualified to do, other than be a journalist, was real estate sales. That's what my father was, a broker in
Right.
Cape Breton.
Yeah.
So I got my real estate license in Ontario when my sister came to town looking for a house, and we went looking around for real estate. And she said, Jesus, she said, this is appalling service. You should get your license. And I thought, oh, yeah, that might be an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No
I did.
problem.
I got my license. No, that was it. I hated it. It took 2 years
Really?
to make any money, and yeah, I just didn't like it. You know, seeing the money side of people every day is not a good side of people to see either.
Right.
See,
Sure.
I find it's the most transparent.
Hmm.
I do. And I live in a very finance driven world. So I watch the markets every day. Like I analyze every day. I spend hours a day working on I call it, it's like my craft. It's my trade. It's what I really enjoy doing. And um, this goes back to a question that I want to phrase afterwards. But um, when you can follow the money, when you can understand where the money goes, where it comes from, why it's generated, where it's going, how it's going to end up, who's it's affecting, you can get down to people's cores very quickly. And obviously that's a very corporate, that's a somewhat bleak look of the world. But in my reality, it's been pretty spot on. Like if you can realize that there's a ton of money coming, and you know, we're going to get a little bit political here, but the war in Ukraine, there's lots of questions that I have that I don't think there's a lot of truths that we're getting over here. And again, the propaganda that we're told, and it's nice to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit with someone who's had a glimpse at the wizard, if you know what I'm saying. So like when you start looking and start following money and you're seeing the investments and the strategic partnerships that are being done in this war effort, you start going, that's a lot of cash. And I'm not pro Russia by any means. I'm not pro Ukraine either. I'm just a Canadian kid. But it seems like it's a long, far away conflict that I'm not sure why we ended up as deep as we are.
That's a very good question. Why are we even involved?
Right.
Follow the money. You always follow the money. And, you know, even with the Iraq war, there was so many conflicts of interest with people who were getting those big contracts to go in and rebuild after that illegal war.
Right.
And no accountability for the corrupt politicians who are just raking in the cash.
So going back into some of the historic, and obviously, you know, I talk about individuals like Walter Cronkite, and I talk, you know, listen to my parents talking about, you know, his reporting in, you know, Vietnam and talking about what was happening over there. Do you think the system was as dirty, if I can use that terminology then, or was it like you said when you first got into it that it was a bit of a trade of a trade in empathy and pride, and that you were putting forth a real message for individuals at home?
I think generally the narrative was always coming from whoever owned the news organization and who was sponsoring them. Where was the money coming from? So there was always a biased narrative,
Sure.
but not like we're seeing today. I mean, now media outlets have, I mean, we've got 5 American conglomerates that control everything we watch, read, and listen to.
Yeah.
That's wild. And when you tell people that, they don't understand.
I think we were biased back then, but we were honest. Like I think when Walter Cronkite said something, it was true, but biased. You don't think it was true?
For a second.
You don't think it was?
How can you go into Da Nang and bomb out an entire city, and they're showing it? They're fighting in the streets. They're killing thousands and thousands and thousands of women and children. And someone in Midwestern Wisconsin sitting there clapping, going, "We should be there. Support our troops. Support our boys." You can't do that without a large amount of spin and a large amount of messaging that is not honest at all. And again, I have no skin in the game. I wasn't even alive. Wasn't even a glint in me father's eye. But I look at it and I say, we have come a long way, and in not the right ways.
So I'm not saying that it wasn't message driven. It was message driven. What I'm saying, it wasn't made up news to drive a message. I think now it's made up news to drive a message. I think back then they found the story to drive their message. That's what I think the difference is. I think the story was true, but they found the story to make their message come a reality. That's what I think is the difference.
One of my favorite definitions for truth is a fundamental reality defined by a person's perceived experience. So everybody's truth is going to be different.
Yes.
So I try not to get bogged down in truth so much. I try to stay as focused on the facts. But again, even I can have confirmation bias.
I love that, because that is so spot on. And especially in the media world that we're living in right now, is that you turn on CNN and they broadcast X. They're showing a live broadcast, and their spiel is Y. And if you turn on Fox, we're videoing X, and their view is A. And it's the same thing. They're playing a live press conference. They're playing a live event. They're playing that. And you just have two polar views that are, look at this peaceful protest, or look at this devastation and destruction. Like, that to me is where society, and it's kind of why we are here on this platform at the end of the day, because we got sick of it, right? Like, what do I want my daughter turning on CNN at night and watching the filth and garbage that they're putting out as the professionals that are telling you how to think, breathe, and especially with everything that we've went through COVID, the death clock, and what you're going to put in your body and all those sorts of things. Not anti-vaccine. I'm a little bit more on the pro-choice view. You get to have your body, your choice. You get to have your body, your choice. That's how the game's played. You don't pick and choose that. But that's where, you have such political strifes that go down. And again, that conflict even drives commercialism, which Tide's going to market on both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that community radio show, The Good News Only, when I left journalism, and when I was doing the stints as real estate agent, and I was furniture sales, I tried car sales for a year as well.
Love it.
Driving instruction and bus driving. I did bus driving for a couple of years. That was fun. I loved it.
We interviewed a bus driver. It's more complicated than I knew. A lot harder than I thought.
It's a great job. But when I was doing The Good News Only on community radio, I used to interview good people doing good things.
Right.
And my shtick was, take the diet that really works, a media fast. Don't watch, read, or listen to news and feel how much your life improves.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, but so I think a lot of people now, I know my friends, even at my age, are getting their news from Facebook, TikTok, and right? They're getting it from those places now. So it's not even like, it's just getting scarier and scarier and scarier. I just realized, Tanya, we didn't tell you how long we go. Like, most news go about 20 minutes.
I could talk to you guys forever.
Forever, literally. I just realized we didn't tell you that.
Yeah.
And we once interviewed these people, and they were you could see them looking at their watch, going, "Why are we still talking?" Do you remember that, Pat? They're literally, and so then we started telling everyone, you know what? Like, we go long. We go until the conversation stops, and it just makes sense. But I think in this case, we've already gone a long time, and you know what, Tanya, we would love to have you back, because this is
hang on.
Amazing.
I gotta throw up the website here, because I want her to be able to show.
Oh yeah, website and your book. Wait. Let her show her dad's book, the book she wrote for her dad first, the journal.
Look at how tech savvy we are.
Let's make her big. One sec. We're gonna make you big.
Well, I wrote
the
first one, Mindful Wisdom from My Philosopher Dad, Sage Advice from a Single Father. So I wrote this one when my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I started to write the book because I wanted to leave a legacy. He was just such an extraordinary man. I wanted to finish it before he passed. It didn't work. that way. It took me 10 years to do this book. So this was my first book, and I'm so grateful that Lisa Browning, if it wasn't for Lisa Browning, I would never have gotten this done. So thank you, Lisa, for doing this. So this was my first book for Philosopher Dad. And then during the pandemic, I wrote book 2. And this one is a nice thick book. It's a journal that I did. And so every day has an inspirational message with lines where you can reflect on the message and contemplate your intentions for the day. And I wrote this one as daily wisdom from my philosopher dad, some inspiration to guide your days. And both are available on Amazon.ca.
I love it.
Amazing. Amazing. Both books are that's very cool. Like, so are they all inspiration stuff that came from your dad's lips to your ears?
Most of the ones in this daily wisdom book, most of them have come from my dad, but some of them came from me and my life experience and passed along from other mentors I've had in my life as well.
It's funny, word for word, you have said what Ross Campbell has a whole podcast series, Leaving a Written Legacy. And he pushes this idea that you should leave a written legacy, a video legacy, a written legacy. And ever since he said that, when I make videos for so I make videos for Soaring Profits like all the time, I think about that. What kind of legacy am I leaving? What's the message that I'm leaving? And that's pretty important stuff. And that is so cool that you were able to, leave a legacy of your dad, and not only that, blend your legacy in with it. I just think that's amazing. And Lisa Browning, amazing woman. She's the reason you're talking to us right now. So yeah, shout out to Lisa. She's just incredible. The amount of people that she has promoted, helped, driven, she is a marvel.
So I've got you up here, Tanya, and this is your website. So Red Roof Recovery. Kind of walk me through here some of the relevant things that we'd like to point out to people. Obviously, we have, that you do have your own podcast. What kind of information are individuals going to see on your podcast?
My husband does the podcast with me. And awesome. What I love about that is that he brings the family perspective of not understanding addiction. He could not understand why I couldn't just stop. So I love that he brings that family perspective because, for every one person I talk to who's addicted, 5 family members are also affected. And there's very little help available for family members. So I hope to develop some programs for family members very soon. In the meantime, however, this is my passion project of this 1-week recovery program for people like me who couldn't take 30 days away from work. Right. So you check in Friday after work and, going to a rehab. No, thank you. I'm not interested in going to a dorm-like facility, sharing a bedroom and a bathroom with people I don't know and going to group meetings. No, thank you. So this is a very niche market. It's for professionals who want to come after work on a Friday, spend an exhaustive week of working with me, knee to knee, face to face, 12, 14 hours a day. And at the end of the week, the following Friday, you leave after lunch with a new plan, a new lease on life, a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a new way of being with a lifetime aftercare program.
So explain to me a little bit about your lifetime aftercare program. Is this that you're always able to be reached? You're able to be called? What does that look like?
It's mostly hands-off program, but I am available for certain amounts of time, depending, that can be worked out with each individual. It's like, again, it's not a boxed program.
Yep.
Right.
It's tailored for what the person needs to keep them engaged in their recovery. That's the most important thing, is to keep doing the work. What's going to keep you engaged?
Absolutely.
So what do I do? So I've watched Soaring Profits. I understand that today's not a good day. I woke up naked on the floor or whatever it is. What do I do? How do I access you?
Well, let me show you the website.
Yeah, you go on the website and decide what you want to do. Do you want to come to a residential program? Then you click on a button and send me a message or call me.
Yep.
If you want to take one of the 3 online programs that are self-help programs, hands-off, you can do that. What else is there?
What do the self-help
I
programs?
haven't looked at my website for a while. I don't even know.
You tell me where to go, and I'll about RRR.
And I do one-on-one with people at $150 an hour, which I understand is a pretty good rate.
Look at those handsome people.
So I have a counselor, Tanya, and I pay $170, I believe, an hour.
Yeah, so $150 is a pretty good rate, I think.
Not too bad.
Yep.
Yeah, not when you're getting the kind of recovery that you say, right?
And most of my appointments are 90 minutes as well for that 150. So it's
right.
I don't know if you can really put a numerical dollar amount on what you're doing.
I don't think so either. I'm not doing this for the money. It's not a great business model.
No, and that's the thing, though, right? Is that it's getting the information out to individuals and having them be able to look inward a little bit more on what they're doing. I think it's great. So the first thing that comes to mind here is at the very top of your page here is talking about a 15-minute consultation. That's obviously, a first start for anyone that's out there listening to this, profiteers, anyone that's suffering from this right now. You've had an opportunity to talk with, and hear from Tanya tonight and her take on the world. And for 15 minutes of your time, what do you got to lose? Right. Yeah. This is someone who you can tell she's got a lot of empathy. She's a problem-solving person. She's an individual that has stood up when, it's not necessarily easy to do. And maybe it's time that you guys do that as well. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. So take that 15-minute consultation, give her a call, and maybe you'll send you down on a path that you've maybe never experienced before. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Change your life.
Change your life.
7 days, change your life. I think that's incredible.
That's great. Well, Tanya, I think we'll leave it at that. First of all, I want to thank you very much. Sorry?
I said amazing.
Amazing.
I've enjoyed every second, Tanya.
Absolutely. So this is where at the end of our little podcast, and you've watched all of them, so you know how this works. So at the end of our little spiel here, I have a little slogan. James has a little slogan, and then we always stick our guests with the final word. Whether it's an inspirational quote, maybe something from your father, maybe something a little more stoic, however you want to go with that. But you get the last word and you get to sign us off. But for us, again, folks, thank you so much. Patrick from Soaring Profits. Please like, subscribe, and share this. This is a conversation that, we ran an hour and 22 minutes. But I think there's a lot to dive into that first. We'll call it 45 or 50 in regards to helping yourself, helping somebody else that you know. And this is in every aspect of your life. You want to lose 10 pounds, you want to change your life, you want to get off drugs, you want to stop doing anything. This is somebody who can help you with that. So give her a call, give her a shout, see what we can do. As for me, guys, obviously we've had a bit of a crazy week in the stock market and the economy. I'm hoping to get some stuff out over the next little while. We have to start looking back at the macroeconomics issues that are affecting the United States and grossly the world right now. And we have to kind of be able to focus in on what's happening next. And I think you're going to see a lot of tumultuousness in the market. So those of you that are looking at maximizing your RSP contributions, your TFSAs, I'm wholeheartedly for it, but I'm not saying to throw your money into like these just generic mutual funds you're getting at your bank. Follow us. Take a look at what we're doing. Follow with TradingView. There's tons of opportunities out there right now to be trading in and out over days, over weeks, these swing trade opportunities where there's so much money to be made out there, guys, in a time where money seems sometimes a little bit elusive. So as for that, thank you folks for checking in on me, and let's make some money together, guys. James.
I really do I can get behind everything Tanya says. All the things we're talking about here are very similar to some of the videos that you guys have already watched that I have said. In 7 days, you can completely change your life. In 7 days, I've changed my life. I went from a 356 pound man, and I lost all that weight because a friend of mine gave me a 7-day cycle that I could follow easily. And that was the point of difference. That was it. It was just that I could follow a 7-day cycle, and I kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it. Once you know you can do something, that mental toughness that I talk about all the time, you've built that mental toughness because you've learned that you can do it, and you just blow past it. And you guys out there, I don't care what your situation is. If you go to Tanya here and you get help, that's amazing. If you go to someone else and get help, that's amazing. But it will only work if you want help. So the moment, the second, that point of impact, that moment that you're lying on the floor and you're praying to God saying, God, I just need something. That's the moment you get up and you do something. Don't wait for the next day, because the next day you're going to drink, the next day you're going to do drugs, the next day you're going to eat. You have to do it that second. Join the gym that second. Call Tanya at that second. Whatever it is, go do it at that second, because that is the moment that you have. After that, it's gone. And you won't get one back till maybe you never get one back, because your cup has flipped over and you don't wake up the next morning.
I see what you did there. That was good.
You like that? That was good.
That's smooth.
As for Soaring Profits, we got so many great things. So you saw last week we were talking to Clay. We were talking to Clay, the creator of Canal Pursuit. I signed up to that very race, and so now Clay and I are in talks about maybe me doing some media, doing some interviews. I'm running in the race. I'm pretty excited. I know that's not coming for a while, but that is something that we're setting up, because you know how I feel about mental health being very important, and the fact that he is promoting mental health and running, which is something I love, something I can really get behind, and I can't wait. Today, I just launched Soaring Profits and Friends 3, which I think personally is amazing. We got Coach Kate information in there. We got that good-looking guy right beside me. He's got some information. This good-looking guy has some information. Something from Dave from Runner's Life. We got one of those beautiful videos that Finding Fish, Mike Fisher, makes all the time. A lot of great content. Get in there. See the positivity that I'm trying to promote. The whole point of Soaring Profits and Friends is to show these people that I found, that Pat and I have found, that we've interviewed, and all the positive things they're doing to change their lives, and they can change your life. And this is my mission, and this is why it's so important to me. Let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together.
Tanya.
That's beautiful. Thanks so much, James, Patrick, for the work that you're doing. Thank you for having me as a guest. I think it's absolutely fantastic, the work that you're doing, and so needed. I'm honored to be a guest. My wish for you is to live well, laugh often, love always, stay positive. May the force be with you. And remember,